Tullahoma's story, our story, begins in the 1840s, 180 years ago. Tullahoma was not even a wide place in the road. In fact, there were no suitable roads leading into town. Another fact, we didn't have a name. That will come a little later. The 1850 census listed 367 people in this little village. There was no post office, stores, or churches. The turning point came in 1848 when Nashville, Chattanooga, and the St. Louis Railroad announced a railroad would be built between Nashville and Chattanooga. The village of Tullahoma was chosen as a good location for a work camp for the railroad workers, since it was nearly the halfway point and one of the highest elevations between Nashville and Chattanooga. The site upon which Tullahoma is built and the 5,000 adjacent acres were originally acquired by land speculators after the railroad announced it would run through Tullahoma. The land speculators, or founders, were men of character, learning, and distinction. Benjamin Deckard, in whose honor Deckard Street was named, General William Moore, for whom Moore Street was named, Dr. T.A. Anderson, a man of rare culture, learning, and travel, Colonel Pierce Anderson, his brother, a graduate of West Point, and Volney Stevenson. Volney Street was named for him. Anderson Street was named in honor of the two Anderson brothers. As the railroad construction workers neared the town, the land company opened the sale of Tullahoma lots. The first sale took place in August 1851. By the end of 1851, the town had its first commercial business, the store of James Grizzard, as well as the Lincoln Hotel. In 1852, a private school was established and a Methodist church opened its doors. On September 2nd, 1852, the 469 residents of this village petitioned the county government in Manchester for an official city charter. Colonel Anderson, the brains of the company, had vision beyond his time. Tullahoma's original streets were so even and wide, it was one of the few places that did not have to widen them upon the advent of the automobile era. Atlantic Street, appropriately given the slogan, "As wide as the Atlantic," contains a 100-foot right-of-way on either side of the railroad. It reached 350 feet in width, and before the creation of the interstate system, was listed in Ripley's Believe It or Not as the widest street in the world. It has never been doubted that the name Tullahoma has an Indian origin, but how did the town acquire its name, and what does it mean? As much as we would like to say, and I did as mayor until I learned better, it does not mean land of golden flowers. I always liked that one. Or an Indian maiden, but that's not the case. In the 1830s, there was a Tullahoma, Mississippi. That village merged with an adjoining village to form Grenada, Mississippi. One of the founders of Tullahoma, Mississippi was a John McLemore of Memphis. In the early 1850s, McLemore visited one of his old friends, one of the founders of Tullahoma, Dr. Anderson. In discussing a name for the new town, he proposed the Indian words Tullahoma, meaning red rock, as a name for the little village. Founders Dr. Anderson and his brother Colonel Anderson are both buried in Oakwood Cemetery. A plaque there honors their role in the development of Tullahoma. In 1855, the railroad finished construction of the McMinnville branch. This new rail line provided access to markets for the region's hundreds of farms. Wheat, flax, corn, and cotton arrived in town by the wagon loads. The town also became a shipping point for livestock. The First Baptist Church was founded in 1857. The first recorded city officials were elected in 1857, and C.C. Carter became the first mayor. Judge Connolly actually swore in. And he has a picture to prove it.
It's on the glass plate.
The original plan of the town founders was for the town square to be located in the 13-acre plot in the area around South Jackson Performing Arts Center. The railroad depot would be located at the Deckard Street crossing. It was soon decided, however, to move the depot further north, close to Lincoln and Grundy Streets, to serve both the branch railroad and the main railroad. Future town merchants immediately purchased business sites near the new depot instead of the town square. They sought the advantages of locations near the activities associated with the depot in those days. Although there were many merchants and businesses in Tullahoma, by 1862, business was entirely suspended during Tullahoma's occupation by federal troops. Before the war, Judge Catron, one of the United States Supreme Court judges, had a summer home here, and his grand colonial residence served as headquarters for both Confederate and federal commanders. Tullahoma was only a 10-year-old small village at the commencement of the war, but became a place of some strategic importance. General Bragg fell back from Murfreesboro, and he made Tullahoma his army's headquarters in 1863. The Tullahoma campaign opened on June 24, 1863. Tullahoma was the objective of the Union Army of the Cumberland, and Bragg was forced to evacuate the town on the 1st of July. Guarding Tullahoma from the northern entrance was a 5-point earth fort, beginning near the site of the city's old filtration plant on Country Club Drive and extending west across the railroad tracks to Wilson Avenue. The 407 markers in the Tullahoma Confederate Cemetery on Maplewood Avenue mark the dead from the Tullahoma campaign, plus casualties of illness, as well as the Battle of Murfreesboro and nearby skirmishes. Tullahoma remained under federal occupation for the remainder of the war. Wartime occupation wreaked havoc upon Tullahoma. Today, no buildings remain from the antebellum period. Businesses were destroyed, homes were dismantled, but the tracks of the Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad remained, and on these tracks would ride a rapid return to prosperity. Martial law would not end in the town until 1867, and a fire later that year destroyed many of the recently constructed commercial enterprises. But Tullahoma enjoyed a strong economic recovery during Reconstruction. 15 retail merchants had opened stores by 1867. The most significant was a Michael Ross Campbell, who arrived in town in 1865. In the decades to come, Campbell would prove to be a significant civic leader and tireless booster of Tullahoma's commercial and industrial potential. Mr. Campbell may truly be called the father of industry in Tullahoma. The immediate post-war years also brought Tullahoma notoriety as an excellent health and summer resort. Tullahoma was famous for its apparent immunity from epidemics and its health-giving waters. It attracted invalids, pleasure seekers, summer and winter visitors from the north, as well as the southern states. Not a single case of cholera, yellow fever, or any other epidemic scourge has ever been known here. During this time, Tullahoma was the best-known summer resort in Tennessee. Mr. Campbell's factory, plus another woodworking plant owned by Mr. Campbell, employed 200 people in the early 1900s. Hubs, spokes, golf sticks, baseball bats, and hockey sticks were manufactured in Tullahoma. A handsome opera house was one of Tullahoma's attractions. The Hurricane Hall was one of the most elegantly finished and furnished hotels in the country. The European Hotel and Restaurant was an elegant 3-story brick. A guest register from the hotel in 1887 showed guests from 26 states and China. The town well at the Lincoln and Wall Street intersection was a familiar landmark of early Tullahoma and provided an abundance of water. There was a bandstand built over the well, which was the center of attraction for many social gatherings. The well was dug in 1875 and filled in 1908. The first bank in town, First National Bank, was established in 1884. The town's second bank, Traders National Bank, opened in 1889. Sawmills were a staple of the business activity around the tracks. So were our brickyards. Most early brick homes and businesses were constructed of Tullahoma-made brick. A sense of city pride and identity was clearly evident. Mr. Campbell established another major new industry, the Campbell and Dan Manufacturing Company, in 1897. Also in 1897, St. Barnabas Episcopal Church was constructed. In 1897, there were 6 grocery stores, 2 flour mills, 4 blacksmiths, 3 shoe stores, 3 general merchandise stores, 2 banks, 2 hotels, hardware stores, barber shop, restaurant, and of course 2 distilleries and saloons in Tullahoma. An oval harness racing track was located where the current high school football and baseball stadiums sit now. Later, that area was the location of Tullahoma's first golf course. Considering where Tullahoma stood in 1865, a town largely demolished by both Confederate and Federal forces and occupied by the Federal Army, to its condition at the turn of the century, a thriving railroad center of almost 2,700 residents, fine Victorian-styled homes, 3 full business blocks, and several medium-sized factories, the town's change in fortunes is striking. In 1910, passenger traffic reached its peak. 4 round trips between Nashville and Chattanooga passed daily, and a single round trip between Tullahoma and Nashville and between Tullahoma and Chattanooga passed through daily, except on Sundays. In 1919, Floyd Mitchell and John Mather established a wagon and lumber company, which 8 years later became the Builder Supply. By 1916, the speed limit in Tullahoma was 15 miles an hour and 10 miles an hour in the business district. In 1921, businessmen formed the town's first Rotary Club. In 1924, downtown streets were paved, and Lanham Manufacturing Company began manufacturing baseballs and softballs. Perhaps as important as the railroad was the construction of the Dixie Highway, the first paved road between Chicago and Miami. Jackson Street became the Dixie Highway's route through Tullahoma. In 1926, the state of Tennessee established a training camp for the Tennessee National Guard 1 mile from Tullahoma and named it for Governor Alston P. The most influential event shaping modern Tullahoma, the establishment of Camp Forrest, located on the current AEDC property, came as America prepared for war in 1940-41. In June 1941, 80,000 soldiers came to Camp P and began maneuvers all around the Tullahoma area. General George Patton brought his 2nd Armored Division here from Fort Benning, Georgia. After the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, Senator Kenneth McKellar, chairman of the United States Senate Appropriation Committee, and Tullahoma Mayor John Harton convinced the military to convert Camp P into a federal induction center, renamed Camp Forrest. During the war, an estimated 250,000 soldiers passed through the gates at Camp Forrest. One estimate has the town's temporary population reaching 75,000. Camp Forrest covered 10 square miles and was crisscrossed with 55 miles of roads. Tullahoma had suddenly become a boom town as thousands of workers swarmed the area. 19,000 workers built Camp Forrest, which caused shortages of everything. Townspeople opened their homes, their garages, their outbuildings, but it was not enough. That same year, there was a $5 million appropriation for 1,300 acres to build an Army Air Force airfield. William Northern Field became a part of Camp Forrest and was a training center for B-24s, B-25s, and P-39 Air Cobras, as well as spotter aircraft for training the Army's artillery observers. The Camp Forest area was ideally situated with hills, valleys, streams, and springs. Among the famous units stationed here was the 2nd Ranger Battalion, which later became distinguished in scaling the 90-foot bluffs at Omaha Beach to overtake the enemy in the Normandy landings. The camp eventually contained, listen to this, 535 barracks, 11 chapels, 4 theaters, 22 large warehouses, a hospital, and headquarters building. There was never a time between September 1941 and March 1944 when there were fewer than 50,000 troops on the post. Camp Forest became a prisoner of war camp in 1942. At the camp, the prisoners worked in such facilities as the hospital, the bakery, kitchens, and the automotive shop. Camp Forest received more than 22,000 POWs during the war. The last POWs left in April 1946. When the war ended in 1945, the campus was declared surplus property. The buildings at Camp Forest were auctioned and dismantled, leaving nothing but roads, brick chimneys, and concrete foundations. One of the Camp Forest buildings is at 502 South Jackson Street and was known for many years as the Red Cross Building. It is now named after the longest serving city administrator in the history of Tullahoma, Jody Balls. Northern Field was put up for sale for $125,000. Tullahoma was given the first chance to purchase it, but on June the 14th, 1947, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen voted no. It was later purchased by Mr. John Harton for $135,000. By war's end, Tullahoma had a superior water and sewage department, sealed streets, and good highways, thanks to the federal government. In 1941, Dr. James King opened the Queen City Infirmary, which was the city's only hospital for 26 years. It is estimated Dr. King delivered 1,800 babies. The infirmary was located about where the First Baptist Church Fountain is now. In 1944, the Kings bought the old Crouch Farm on Short Springs Road. They built a handsome 2-story house on their farm. It is classic revival style with portico, columns, and fittingly named Royal Oaks. After Dr. and Mrs. King's death, the farm property was sold and part of it was subdivided into Kings Ridge subdivision. In 1863, Tullahoma voters approved a bond issue for a city hospital. Land for the hospital was donated by the heirs of John W. Harton Sr. The 53-bed hospital opened in 1967 and officially named Harton Memorial Hospital. The hospital, a $1.2 million structure, was financed with federal funds, bonds, and private donations. Today, the 135-bed Vanderbilt Tullahoma Harton Hospital offers state-of-the-art facilities, has 500 employees, and over 200 active and courtesy physicians on staff. In 1953, the city purchased a lot on the corner of Jackson and Grundy Streets for a new city hall, which was completed in 1954. It housed all city departments, including police, fire, and the utilities board. One of the finest hotels in the Southeast, the King Hotel, was located near the heart of the city. It was demolished in the early 1970s and located approximately where Sinorama is now. Shifting gears, amid the ashes of World War II, American scientists surveying German technology were disturbed to find a sophisticated network of flight simulation test facilities. They found facilities, rockets, aircraft, and jet engines, all more advanced than what the Allies had even imagined. Fortunately, the Germans had developed these technologies too late to turn the tide of the war. But it was a wake-up call. The United States was years behind in the development of aerospace technology. The commander of the newly created U.S. Air Force, General Hap Arnold, realized the production of new hardware required the establishment of research and development organizations, as well as new and better testing facilities. Recommendations were made to use captured German test facilities in a new installation located near large sources of water and electric power. 3 leading Tullahoma citizens took the lead in pitching Tullahoma as the location for the new center. John W. Harton solicited the help of former Camp Forest Superintendent Mr. Sanders. The third was Tullahoma Mayor Dr. Jack Farrer. All 3 made numerous trips to Washington. The selection finally came down to 2 locations from the nearly 100 being considered across the country. It was either Moses Lake, Washington, or Tullahoma, Tennessee. For weeks, the race was declared neck and neck between the 2 cities. Tennessee Senator Kenneth McKellar made his big pitch. The state of Tennessee would donate Camp Forest to the Air Force as the site of the new Air Engineering Development Center. The Air Force couldn't resist, and in 1948, the former Camp Forest was named as the site for the Air Force's new test center. It was a time of celebration in Tullahoma. Work began on June the 2nd, 1950. On June 25th, 1951, President Harry S. Truman dedicated the Air Engineering Development Center in memory of the late General Arnold, renaming it the Arnold Engineering Development Center. It took 58 railroad cars, 2 large barges, plus another 450 tons by truck to move the German equipment to AEC. Several personalities helped shape Tullahoma in the 1900s. John W. Harton was one of Tullahoma's outstanding citizens. He was an assistant cashier at Traders National Bank when he decided to enter the real estate business, selling his first house in 1905 at the age of 22. In 1912, at the age of 29, he became Tullahoma's youngest mayor, serving also in 1919 and 1934. He married the former Frances Lewis in 1914, and the couple had 4 children: John Harton Jr., Alice Ratcliffe, Nancy Washburn, and Laddie Neal. The latter survives, and she's 95 years old. Also in 1912 came the fateful day that was to end Mr. Harton's bachelorhood. The young mayor, charming and stylish, was pursuing dollars by day and damsels by dusk. One Saturday evening, he was standing in front of the drugstore watching a group of visiting co-eds from Tennessee College of Murfreesboro stroll by. Smitten by a beautiful blonde, he did his mayoral duty of welcoming her to Tullahoma. She was Frances Lewis of Adrian, Michigan, whose father had sent her south to get away from the northern wolves. When Mr. Lewis heard of the courtship, he wrote to the mayor of Tullahoma and inquired about the character of one John Harton. The mayor replied, "I've known John Harton all his life. He is honest, industrious, handsome, and a good Christian boy. I would not hesitate to say he would make a fine husband for your daughter." Signed, John Harton, Mayor. John and Frances were married September 3rd, 1914. Joe Lester tells me that letter exists today. The story was told that Mr. Harton was extolling the virtues of Tullahoma's water and climate to a visitor when a funeral procession went by. The visitor asked, "Who died?" Mr. Harton said, "Oh, nobody dies here. That body was shipped in." No one ever claimed that Mayor Harton lacked the Tullahoma spirit. He played a highly significant role in local leadership and commercial development for the next 3 decades. He created the city slogan, "Tullahoma, where everybody boosts and opportunity knocks." And during his first term, he supervised the construction of a city hall, fire station, which housed the city's first horse-drawn fire wagon. He had sidewalks installed as well as electric lights. His efforts to improve Tullahoma, however, didn't always meet with unqualified approval. He did give the city's Main Street its first paving. Then he wanted to widen the sidewalks, but this would require the removal of some shade trees. A Save the Trees committee was formed and prepared to present their case to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on Monday morning. On Sunday night, Mayor Harton personally cut the trees down. He said, when a man is accustomed to getting what he wants, he isn't likely to hold still for interference with progress. Usually the citizens were very happy with his actions. He decided that Tullahoma should be the first town of its size to have electric streetlights and gave everyone in town a porch light at city expense. Many of the homes had no electricity inside, but their porches provided Tullahoma with streetlights. During the Tullahoma Centennial in 1952, one writer summed it up by saying, probably no one person has done more for Tullahoma in the past 40 years than John W. Harton. Mr. Harton also served as treasurer for the state of Tennessee from 1935 to 1945. He died in 1963, and in March of 1964, the family gave the city 11 acres of land on North Jackson Street as the site for a hospital. The hospital stands there today, a fitting memorial to a man who really cared about his hometown. Another prominent person in Tullahoma, Dr. Jack Fair, a physician and businessman, was born in 1906. He came to Tullahoma in 1935, where he practiced medicine until his retirement in 1971. He was named mayor in 1939 and served 17 years, the second longest tenure than any other mayor in the city's history. He was instrumental in obtaining AEC and the construction of Harton Hospital. In 1971, Tullahoma's new elementary school under construction was named the Jack T. Fair Elementary School. Less than a month later, he died of cancer. George Vibert moved to Tullahoma as a child and served as president of American City Bank. He was elected mayor in 1972 and served 10 years. He said one of his greatest accomplishments as mayor was opening up government to more people. He placed more people on boards and commissions, including the first woman on a board, Frances Murrell, on the school board, and the first minority on the planning commission, Marvin Sanders. Under his administration, the first city administrator was hired, the airport was purchased, and an innovative sales tax sinking fund was established to build and maintain our schools. His first 4 terms were more or less routine, but in his last term, 2 issues came up which divided the city with conflict and bitterness. From the time Tullahoma became a name on the map, it had been famous for good water. But during Mr. Vibert's last administration, the city began getting water from Normandy Lake instead of Short Springs. Many people thought the water had an awful odor, was muddy, and had specks in it. But the city joined with others to create the Duck River Utility Commission. And today, Tullahoma's water has been recognized 5 times as the best in Tennessee and Kentucky, as recently as August of this year. There was a second serious matter that came up during Mr. Vibert's last term, the sale of the city-owned Harton Hospital, which many people did not want to happen. But on July 1st, 1982, Harton Hospital became the property of American Health Corporation for $10,500,000. Mayor Vibert is also credited for bringing leading retailer Castner Knott and Northgate Mall to Tullahoma. He had heard Castner Knott was looking to locate a store in Shelbyville. He met with Castner Knott executives in Nashville and convinced them the store needed to be in Tullahoma. Castner Knott and Northgate Mall were built in the early 70s, positioning Tullahoma as a regional retail destination. Tullahoma has long supported excellence in education. Following the city referendum in 1885, which passed 158-3, the first public school was built in 1886. It faced Jackson Street on the old Public Square property and is now the South Jackson Performing Arts Center. It was built at a cost of $6,000. of which $1,000 was lent by private citizens. An important focus of city pride was the 1892 Jessie May Alliott College, a 3-story stone building on East Lincoln Street, where East Lincoln Elementary School now stands. Several private colleges and academies occupied this building until it burned in 1922. It is significant the city constructed this building to attract operators of private schools to Tullahoma. These institutions included the Jessie May Alliott College, the University of Middle Tennessee, and the Fitzgerald and Clark Academy, which boasted legendary athletes and athletic teams from 1910 to 1922. In 1898, a 3-room school for African American children was built on South Jackson Street. Mayor Davidson donated $1,000 for the chairs in the 1920s, so the school was named for him. It grew and became a high school in 1935, and the last class graduated in 1964. Integration of all city schools was completed that fall. Professor Stamps was principal from 1924 to 1966. The old building was razed in 1998 and replaced with C.D. Stamps Community Center in 2000. In 1922, a $60,000 bond was issued to finance the addition to the elementary school and construct our first high school. That high school was built on East Lincoln Street, close to the current East Lincoln Elementary School. When Camp Forest was established during World War II, the population multiplied so rapidly the federal government built East Lincoln Elementary School in 1942. Tullahoma's first junior high school, named West Junior High, was constructed and opened in 1951 on the same campus as South Jackson School. By 1952, plans were underway to build Bel Air Elementary School. In 1956, construction started on a new high school on North Jackson Street on property that was previously the golf course. The school was known as the $1 Million School. The old high school located on East Lincoln became East Junior High. The school system then consisted of a high school, 2 junior high schools, and 2 elementary schools, Bel Air Elementary and East Lincoln Elementary. In 1972, it was decided that South Jackson Elementary School, Tullahoma's first public school, should be closed and replaced with a new building. Fair Elementary School was constructed and named for Mayor Fair. In 1975, East Middle School was constructed for grades 6 through 8. A new West Middle School was built off Curlee Creek Road in 2004, and 8 years later, a new East Lincoln Elementary School was opened. No history of Tullahoma would be complete without mentioning Mr. Morris Simon, who came to Tullahoma in 1946 as editor of the Tullahoma News. He wrote editorials and personally supported the Normandy and Thames Ford Dams, Botlow College, UTSI, Heart Hospital, and the Multi-County Mental Health Center. The Coffee County Library was organized in Tullahoma in 1948 and was located on South Jackson Street. In 1949, the building burned and all the books were lost. The library moved around to several different locations until 1962, when a campaign for a new library was a success. And with county funds, city funds, and generous donation from the Lanham family, the new Lanham Memorial Library was opened on North Collins Street. As the space race heated up, so did AEDC's workload. AEDC was used for the Mercury space capsule, which sent Alan Shepard and John Glenn into space. The center was a key player in supporting Project Gemini and also played a multifaceted role in supporting the Apollo program, which put man on the moon. In the commercial area, AEDC later provided testing on engines from the Boeing 777, 747, and 767. Tullahoma is surrounded by 3 man-made lakes that provide recreational activities for many. Woods Reservoir was formed in the 1950s when the Elk River was dammed to provide water for the newly formed AEDC complex. Kens Ford was formed in 1966 when TVA began the construction of Kens Ford Dam. Normandy Lake was formed in 1976 when TVA built a dam on the Duck River. To support the mission of AEDC, the University of Tennessee formed the UT Space Institute in 1964. The Institute is one of the top technological resources in America. The Institute offers advanced degrees in industrial engineering, physics, as well as mechanical, aerospace, and biomedical engineering. Many astronauts have graduated from UTSI. Currently, a successful push has been made to locate hypersonic activity in the U.S. at AEDC and UTSI. A 187-acre site for a junior college was donated by the Motlow family of Lynchburg, and construction began in 1968. The college opened in the fall of 1969 with 551 students, serving a 7-county area. In 1983, Motlow's service area was expanded from 7 to 11 counties, and a major campus expansion was implemented. Motlow State College now enrolls approximately 6,000 students. Tullahoma supported the arts for many years. The former public school on South Jackson Street was saved from demolition in 1977 by a group of citizens who established South Jackson Civic Center. Not only was money donated, but hours and hours of hard labor also. That work continues today. Many people worked at removing old plaster, cleaning windows, installing new wiring, stripping floors, and building dressing rooms. The building also contains the Mitchell Museum, named for former Mayor and Mrs. Floyd Mitchell. The Tullahoma Fine Arts Center, incorporated in 1968, is located in the historic Ballet Building home at 401 South Jackson Street. Tullahomans enjoy rotating exhibits by regional artists and a variety of art classes. The Tullahoma Area Chamber of Commerce has long been a strong voice for Tullahoma's businesses and a partner in progressive development and a front door to our community for visitors. In the 1980s, Tullahoma citizens passed liquor by the drink. This opened the door for restaurants like Ruby Tuesday, Red Lobster, and Applebee's to come to Tullahoma. Tullahoma can boast fine parks and recreation facilities, including 600 acres of parks, a $4 million football stadium, a landmark baseball stadium, greenway and walking trails, and Splash Island Water Park. Tullahoma's airport has come a long way since the 1940s. It is now one of the top 5 general aviation airports in the state. A business air park is located on the north side of the airport property with new tenants. The airport is the home base for 165 aircraft. The Tullahoma Utilities Board, now Authority, began offering cable, phone, and internet services through LightTube 15 years ago. Tullahoma is one of the smallest cities and one of the first in the United States to offer gigabit service. Through LightTube, fiber to the premise is available to every home and business in Tullahoma. Fewer than 15 other cities in Tennessee offer services like LightTube. The last several years have seen several young Tullahomans take the state and national stage. Rising country music star Dustin Lynch, 2012 Miss Tennessee and top 10 Miss America finalist Chandra Lawson, the 2011 Distinguished Young Woman of America, Katie Brock, plus 6 other state winners since 1979. And since 1979, 14 professional baseball players are from Tullahoma. Tullahoma has 3 times been recognized as the #1 micropolitan city in Tennessee and top 3 in the country. Our Think Tullahoma website earned an international gold medal. In 1970, Tullahoma's population was 15,311. In 2010, the population was 18,655. And in 2020, the population was 20,386. Now, 180 years of history have prepared us for these moments. We live in a blessed community and have so much to look forward to as we work together to design and build a world-class community. So, who will write the next chapters of Tullahoma's history? Thank you.
That was good.